called A Righteous Person is Kind to Animals. The Devar is created in the memory of a beautiful neshama by the name of Sara ben Ami bet Haya, who cared for people and even cared for animals. Actually, one day she raised a puppy that was abandoned, and she raised it, and it grew into be a beautiful, lovely dog that everybody loved. And so Sara was a special person who always needed to express her kindness. You know, it was at the age of 30 that David was anointed as king of Judah, ascended up to the kingship. It was at the age of 30 that Sara, her neshama, ascended up to Shemaim. You know, when God created the world and he planted a garden and he put man in the garden, he brought all the animals to Adam, and Adam gave them a name. You know, if you have a name, you're somebody. It was through the sins of mankind that God brought the flood upon the world. And it affected the entire animal kingdom, obviously. And man sinned through stealing from one another, through immorality. But the sages say it was from stealing from one another that God brought flood upon the world. And the corruption of man had contaminated and diminished even the animal world. And God decided that he needed to destroy life that was existing. And this made God sad in his heart because man had failed him. So what did God do? He found a righteous man named Noah, and him and his family to go into an ark, which Noah built at the command of God. And God brought every species of animal to the ark to be saved. God brought them. It's because God also had compassion on the animal species, and he wanted to save them. And mankind was very diminished at the moment they entered the ark. All mankind was in that ark because of stealing. You know what stealing really is? It's the reverse of chesed, which is kindness. Kindness is giving. But what is stealing? It's taking. And because of that, God brought flood in the world. Because God created this beautiful world through his kindness. He handed mankind authority over the world, and mankind failed in replicating that kindness to one another and to the animals in this beautiful world that God had given mankind to look after. So, what did they do in the ark all day? You know, now you have everybody in the ark and the animals exiting a world where there was no culture of kindness. What did Noah and his family do? They did kindness and chesed. How so, you might ask? All day, the only job they had is to care for the animals. They had to feed them. They had to tend to their needs night and day. They were feeding them, giving to them, caring for them, just giving of themselves. And the animals, they can't replicate that kindness back to people. So it was a one-way street of giving and giving and giving. And this began the transformation of humanity to have a culture of giving. Because to give when you don't expect back, that's kindness. And this is what was taking place inside the ark. The ark literally became a cocoon where the transformational metamorphosis process was taking place. The metamorphosis of mankind, where they would be a people that no longer, because all of mankind was in that ark. It was only 8 people, but that was all of humanity. And during that 1 year they were in the ark, they could only give but never receive. And from this, mankind began to be transformed. The Rambam said that chesed is love, kindness, it's love. And another said Torah is chesed, kindness. And then another one said that Torah is shira, which is song. What does all that mean? Just think about it. Your kind deeds that you do to another person is like music to God. It's the ultimate song. It's the reason that God put you in this world. You know, He created this world because He had the inspiration to do kindness to people, because it's the nature and kindness, it's the love of God, it's who He is. And He wants His creatures to be like God. If we're living in God's image, then we have to reflect it in our behavior. So we have to strive to be kind to one another. And kindness is giving. Giving to someone doesn't expect back in return. Giving to someone who can't pay you back. You just give because your heart motivates you. And if your heart doesn't, you still give. Because in the end, it's taught by Rob Dessler that a giving person, that they grow in love to the object, to the person that they're giving to, more so than the person receiving. And also this will also be replicated to animals. You care for animals. A lot of people, it never really entered their thoughts about being kind to animals. So if in the past, let's say, it's not something that you normally would do, now we know that being kind to animals is something that you can do, and it's like music to God, you know. And that's why we have this little davar. It says, again, to quote Solomon, a righteous person is kind to animals. So now when they came out of the ark, when the butterfly of humanity came out of the cocoon, it was a different people, because now the humanity was ready, was prepared to create an offspring that would come from them. And his name would be Abraham, a man of kindness. The previous generation before the ark could never have produced an Abraham, but the generation that came out of the ark could produce an Abraham, a man of kindness. And through Abraham, he could create a people whose mission would be to redeem the entire world. This is amazing. It all starts with kindness. Abraham, the man of kindness, and his wife Sara, they produced an offspring called Isaac. And Isaac willingly went to put himself on the altar for his father. In obedience to his father, he laid himself down and was willing to self-sacrifice his entire life in obedience to his father, giving up his life. That's giving. And that was an act of kindness by Isaac. He was truly the offspring of Abraham, because he was willing to even give up his life for his father's sake, give everything. After this, Abraham saw a ram when Isaac was still on the altar, and he exchanged the ram for Isaac. So Isaac didn't have to die, but the animal had to die for Isaac, so Isaac could live. So it was that it was time to find Isaac a wife. Abraham sent a servant to Haran to look for a wife. You know, and when he got there, you know, obviously, if he could find a person, a woman that was kind to people, that's a good thing. But how would we know if she had a deep-rooted character trait of kindness? He thought if he would ask her for a drink, and then she would also water the animals. So when he came and he saw Rebecca coming, he went to her and said, "Can you give me a drink?" And the Torah says she did, and she did it quickly. And she said, "I'll also water the camels." And she did so quickly, and this wasn't easy. The jugs, it was from a well, the jugs are heavy, and it says she still did it. He was amazed because he knew that she would be the right woman to marry Isaac. And Isaac and Rebecca gave birth to Jacob, who became the father of the Jewish people. When Jacob had to flee his brother who wanted to harm him, he fled to Haran. And when Jacob was arriving there, he stopped by a well, and he noticed that there were shepherds there, people with flocks. They were just sitting there in the midday sun. And Jacob thought, what's going on here? After greeting them, he said to them, let's quote him, "The day is yet long, Is it not time to take in the livestock, water the sheep, and go pasture them? The sheep are sitting in the sun. Give them water and let them go back in the fields and eat. He cared about the animals. Amazing. Like Rivka, his mother, he cared about the animals. This is amazing. At that time, Rachel came out with sheep. And the Torah says that she was a shepherdess. It's through these sheep she learned kindness. How so? On her wedding night, she gave her sister to Jacob as a wife. Who could even understand such a thing? And a few years later, when Reuben, the son of Leah, was coming from the fields with the dudaim flowers, Rachel approached Leah and said, can you give me your son's flowers? And Leah said, and basically shocked Rachel. Leah said, is it a small matter that you've taken my husband, that you also want to take my son's dudaim? Rachel was shocked, but then she suddenly understood. All this time, Leah had thought that Jacob was her husband and that Rachel had taken him. You see, Jacob was a righteous man. In that tent, he didn't get up in the morning and say, hey, you're not Rachel. I don't want you. I got the wrong person. No, he didn't tell her. He didn't want to hurt her feelings. He just went and told Laban what happened. So when Leah gave the dudaim to Rachel said, when she realized, when Rachel realized how hurt Leah had been, she said, tonight Jacob will be with you. And she gave Jacob over to her again. And Leah bore 2 more children, 2 more boys, and a daughter. That's Rachel. And there was 2 more children born to the maidservant of Leah and 2 to the maidservant of Rachel. And all the children that were born in the merit of Rachel because of her selflessness. And then finally God remembered her and gave her 2 sons, Benjamin and Joseph. Rachel learned her hesed from looking after sheep. And when Joseph had 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, eventually Ephraim became a great leader, his tribe, and ended up leading after the son of King Solomon. The tribes broke away and Ephraim was the leading tribe. And the tribes were sent into captivity. And eventually Judah also went into captivity. But the northern 10 tribes, led by Ephraim. And that would have been the grandson. Ephraim was the grandson of Rachel. And the Torah says, the Midrash says that it's in the merit of Rachel that the children are coming back. That the children of Israel are returning to the land. We learn in the prophet Jeremiah that God spoke to him concerning Rachel. In fact, in a way, God called out to Rachel through the prophet Jeremiah. He said to her, stop your weeping and your crying. Your work will be rewarded, and the children will return to their border. In other words, God with his own words is saying, the children are coming home because of what you did. Again, because Rachel was a shepherdess and cared for sheep, the children, redemption is coming to the people of Israel. We have to remember that. We have to remember Moses. He was a shepherd. But when he fled Egypt, he encountered some other shepherds that were harassing the daughters of Yitro. And after he pushed them away, caring for the daughters of Yitro, it says that he watered the flocks of Yitro. And then, later, he became a shepherd, where he learned kindness and love to animals. And there's a tradition that says one day that there was one lost sheep, and Moses left the other sheep behind. The whole flock, I gotta find that one lost sheep. He cared so much for it. And while he was looking for that lost sheep, he encountered the burning bush. So amazing. You know, he cared for animals. You know, when Jonah the prophet, in the prophet Jonah, the book, we learn in the last chapter, in the last verse, God said to Jonah, I mean, should I not have mercy on the people of Nineveh, this great city of over 120,000 people, and also for the beasts, care for them? In other words, God actually, he saved Nineveh partly because he had compassion on the animals. And then there was David Hamelech. He was a shepherd in the field. Do you know that when a bear came to steal the sheep, he fought the bear and killed it and saved the sheep from its mouth? When a lion came to do the same thing, he did the same, rescued the sheep from the mouth of the lion. He actually risked his life for his sheep. When God saw that, he said, he will shepherd my people Israel. Just like Moses, when he demonstrated this love for one lost sheep and was a shepherd, God said, he's going to be leading my flocks out of Egypt. When David demonstrated this care for the sheep, God said, he's going to lead my people Israel, shepherd my flock. This is utterly amazing. So finally, the last point here, Noah came out of the ark, as we mentioned. And God spoke to Noah. And he said this, it's written in the Torah, and it shall come to pass, when I cause the clouds to come upon the earth, that the rainbow will appear in the cloud. And I will remember my covenant, which is between me and between you, and between every living creature among all flesh. And the water will no longer become a flood to destroy all flesh. And the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will see it, to remember the everlasting covenant between God and between every living creature among all flesh, which is on the earth. The commentator Malbim speaks about this. He says, well, this is mentioning about two different types of rainbows. You know, there's one rainbow which is like the regular rainbow when the world's functioning relatively normal and people look in the sky and they see it and they can remember God's covenant. But he says the second end part talks about another rainbow. Let me just read that last part of the pasuk. It says, and the rainbow shall be in the cloud, and I will see it, to remember the everlasting covenant between God and between every living creature among all flesh, which is on the earth. Here the Malbim says that this rainbow only appears in the clouds, above the clouds. People don't see it, but God says, when I see it, not you, when I see it, then he's going to remember a covenant. And the Malbim says, to quote, when mankind alone is not worthy of being saved, the merit of the animal world, which at least functions according to God's plan, will prevent the catastrophe. In other words, God not only makes covenants with animals, through animals, the world may actually be saved. Just think about it. Think about how important it is to develop a relationship of kindness, because it's an embodiment of who you are. When you're a kind person, you're giving. It manifests itself in so many different ways in your life. Giving to people, caring for animals. Just think of Rachel giving her husband to her own sister. This is like, who could even imagine such a thing? It's kindness that redeems the world. That's how we redeem the world. If the world was destroyed because we didn't do kindness, it's through kindness the world is going to be redeemed. And when God sees that not only are we kind to one another, we're even kind to animals, then we certainly must have an inner character trait that now becomes the embodiment of who we are. No longer is about us, it's about everybody else. All of God's creation, people, because people are more important than animals, we know that. You got to be kind to people. But even being kind to animals is a demonstration of chesed. And thank you very much for watching this. May God bless everyone who's watched this whole video. May you share it with others, and may Hashem Again, look at the beautiful neshama of Sara ben Ami bat Haya, and may He elevate her beautiful neshama to the highest levels of Shemaim. Thank you so much.